Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Rally webinar on effective high volume hiring strategies during a labor shortage. I'm Sylvia with Rally Recruitment Marketing, and I'm so glad that you're joining us. I know that all of you in the Rally community are really going through a tremendous challenge right now in trying to recruit and hire talent. And so this webinar is designed to bring you some new strategies that you can put to use right away. Today's webinar is being sponsored by Appcast, and I want to thank them for their partnership and their support of the Rally community and helping us to bring educational webinars and resources like these to you. Okay, so let me introduce today's speakers. With me today are Thomas Knight, Director of Talent Acquisition and Employment Marketing at Advantage Solutions, and Nancy Cochran with Appcast. Hi, Tom and Nancy.
Hey, Lori.
Hey, Lori. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being here. It's such an important topic, and I'm really happy to have both of you with your expertise on this webinar today. I hope we get lots of questions from our community to really tap into your expertise while you're with us. So Tom, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role, and also Advantage Solutions.
Great, happy to. Thanks again for having me. Advantage Solution is one of the largest solution-based companies for the consumer packaged good industry in the United States, basically North America. We are covering North America, Canada, Puerto Rico. We do go out to Hawaii, and we're in several other countries, expanding through Mexico also as we speak. With that, I mean, the high volume space is really the majority. About 92% of our hires are in the high volume space. And that's everybody that you see that is promoting product through sampling, and also the people that are in grocery stores and convenience stores, stocking shelves and merchandising. So those are the primary two. Advantage owns or has acquired our family of companies, which expand really quite wide, and it's about 150 companies deep. So if you have time, I would welcome you to visit our corporate page and learn all about us.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I would say that Advantage Solutions might not be a household name brand, but definitely your clients are. So thank you for being here and bringing all of your expertise. And Nancy, why don't you share a little bit more about yourself too, and also about Appcast?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lori. So Appcast is a little over 7.5 years old. We were founded in 2014 with the idea of offering a new ad unit, which is CPA, standing for cost per application. On a personal note, I was a brave soul and I joined Appcast on day one. So I've got to see everything that's happened for our organization from that point forward. So that's been really exciting, and it's been a great journey. What we actually do is we offer programmatic technology that will ensure that your dollars are only spent on finding the candidates that you need. We do this through optimization on data, such as down funnel metrics like the apply goals, the cost per applicant, the cost per hire. At this point, we've powered over 1.2 billion job applications. And with each track, post, click, or application comes data insights. We harness these insights to make our customers more successful going forward with our programmatic technology. Thanks, Lori.
Great. Thank you. So let me just share a little bit more about Rally. So for those of you who might be new to Rally, and maybe this is your first webinar with us, I'd love to tell you more about the community. So Rally is the largest community of practitioners in recruitment marketing, employer branding, candidate experience, and we're all here trying to learn modern marketing and branding strategies to help our companies attract, engage, and recruit talent. And in addition to webinars, we have lots of resources on our website, like ebooks and templates and idea books and how-to guides. We also do some training, which is available there. and we run the highest rated free virtual conference in our space called Rally Forward. And the next one is taking place on December 8th. So everyone, I hope that you will register for the conference. We've got an awesome keynote speaker named Todd Henry, whose latest book is called The Motivation Code. And he's going to help us get inside the mindset of people right now and what might be motivating job seekers that could really help you gain an advantage in recruiting. So that's a little bit about Rally. And so here's what you're going to learn today on the webinar. You're going to learn the current attitudes and behaviors of today's hourly talent that's impacting your recruiting efforts. So it's not just you. Everyone is going through this right now, and hopefully you'll walk away with some understanding why that maybe you can share with some of the folks internally who maybe don't understand what's happening in the labor market. Considerations for attracting candidates to safely work in person. And that's a really big one because that's probably a concern of a lot of the talent that you're trying to attract. And of course, effective methods for high volume hiring during the labor shortage. And this is where we're really going to tap into Tom and Nancy's expertise, who are up close and personal in working through this right now. We're also going to do some live Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for Tom or Nancy, I want you to use the Zoom bar at the bottom, use the chat, the Q&A function, and just enter your questions there. We'll queue those up. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be able to take your questions. If there's any help that you need during the webinar, then you can use the chat button, and Aaron from the Rally team is there now standing by and can help you with anything that you need. So let's dive in and discuss high volume hiring. So I want to start with you, Tom. Can you give us more insight into the work that you and Advantage Solutions do? You mentioned demonstrations, but paint us a picture of what you're exactly working on.
Super, thank you. Here at Advantage, we bridge the gap between the manufacturers and the retailers. What I do is I head up the employment marketing department. I've been with the company for going on 12 years. I've built this department from the scratch, and as the economy and conditions have changed, we have adapted and changed not only to the job boards, but to all the media partners out there. I'm responsible for also social media channels, marketing of all the Advantage and club demo services, which are the CDS people that you see handing out samples at Costco's. All of those people work directly for us. I also manage and do the career site. So all the job boards, social channels, grassroots, I work with the field to make sure they have all the collateral that they need. In other words, everything candidate attraction for high volume is really a primary right now because everything's starting to gear back up. So in-store product marketing and merchandising and all those roles that are associated with those high volume positions, which are full and part-time.
Okay. I love to hear that you started that department because this is very common in the Rally community where people raise their hand and they say, I think I could do this. So it's great to have you here. So tell me a little bit more. You used CDS. So what does that stand for? And what are these specific roles that you're recruiting for?
So CDS is Club Demo Services, and we are the sole provider to Costco for in-store marketing of products. These are the people that you see handing out samples. We do a lot of the other merchandising inside the store for selling products. But really the high volume roles fall into two categories. So the main category for marketing is everything demonstrators. So brand ambassadors, event specialists, product demonstrators, any of those derivations of titles are what we look to promote and fill our words. On the other side, we classify it as sales, and sales fall into the merchandising. So the main roles with merchandising is resets. You have project merchandisers and you have sales merchandisers. And the sales are typically full-time roles that engage with the store managers and promote and show the store how they can take a product and earn more visibility and enhance sales through that.
Okay.
So along with Costco, Costco is just one of the companies. We do this also for Walmart, BJ's Wholesale Club up the East Coast. Basically 9 out of the 10 of the largest grocery store chains across the United States.
I believe you told me when we were preparing for this webinar that you have 30,000 jobs that you're recruiting for before the end of the year. Is that right?
We'll be filling close to 30,000 at the end of the year. If the economy comes back the way we expect, that could jump up to 40 to 50, even 60,000. But projections right now are 30 until the other big grocery store chains come back online.
So when we said this webinar was about high volume hiring and we were bringing some experts to the table, like, yes, that is an enormous amount of hires that you have to achieve. So I'm really looking forward to getting into some of the strategies that you're using. And so Nancy, I know that you work really closely with Tom to support their recruiting strategy at Advantage Solutions, and you work with other employers through your role at Appcast. So I think you're in a really interesting position in the industry because you've got many clients. They're all similar to Tom and his challenges that he's going through. And there's a lot of pressure on the TA teams that you're working with right now. Help us understand a bit about what's happening in the labor market. I want to take just a couple of slides on this because I think that I hear from folks in our community that they're under tremendous pressure, but sometimes the people that they're working with don't understand what's actually happening, from an external perspective that they may not have any control over. So bring some of that insight to us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lori. So anybody who's in high volume recruiting is thinking about data all the time. And one of the important reports is the jobs report. And so what I wanted to talk about was some of the things that came out of the August jobs report. Specifically, there were 4 takeaways that we as an organization saw from that. The first one is that the Delta impact on hiring is real. There was a gain of just 235,000 net new jobs, and that was well below the expectation. So that's the first thing. Secondly, workers are still returning to the job market. More job seekers are looking for and finding jobs. The labor force grew by 190,000, and unemployment fell to 5.2%. These extended unemployment benefits likely had, at best, a marginal effect at keeping workers on the sidelines. And those benefits expire fully this month. So that story still has a little bit more of a chapter attached to it. The third one is that wages continue to rise. And this is a big challenge for any employer, but think about a scale enterprise organization. There's a scramble by the worker-starved employers to bid up paychecks. For 5 straight months, the average earnings have increased, and they're actually up 7.8% compared to February of 2020, which we use as pre-pandemic. Production and non-supervisory wages are up 8.5% over that same period. So these are very real considerations, and you think of it as it applies to today, but it's also a trajectory that goes into the future. And then finally, women are impacted. Throughout the pandemic and the subsequent recovery, women have borne the brunt of the economic suffering. That continued in August as the female labor force participation rate remained unchanged at 56.2%, while the rate for males was up to 67.7%. And in addition to Delta concerns, childcare challenges remain a huge obstacle for women, which is a big part of our workforce. So those are the takeaways that we saw from the jobs report. In terms of demand and supply, first we have, the demand for candidates is high. Right now, we are seeing that compared to February of 2020, we have job postings that are up by 39%, which is significant. And this is an important trend that we have to follow.
Yeah, that's an incredible amount of new job ads that you're competing with when you're trying to get your jobs in front of talent right now. It's very, very noisy out there. Yeah, this is.
It is. And I think everybody, as they drive around just in my little neighborhood, every single place has up a sign that says now hiring. In terms of candidate supply, challenges there as well. Candidate supply is still down by 15% compared to the historical metrics. But the good news is it's 17% better than it was to the start of the pandemic, which we mark as March of 2020. Mm-hmm. So there's still work to get done, but we are going the right direction.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, Appcast always provides such an interesting perspective on this kind of economic data. And then you also have a lot of your own research that you make available to the community. So thank you so much. I know people tap into your research all the time and really helps guide their recruiting strategy and helping to make important decisions. And Tom, you faced this up close. So, tell us a bit about how the events of 2020 added to or changed some of your recruiting strategy. And then this will provide, I think, a foundation for the next part of our talk about what you're doing right now.
Super happy to. 2019, if we start there, going into the fourth quarter, we saw low unemployment rates. I mean, historically low unemployment rates and high demand. I mean, the amount of jobs outstripped by quite a bit the people actually looking for them. So how do you compete in that market? And we had a game plan and we had a structure going into that. As we turned into 2020 and the pandemic started to become more aware, we started to see a shift and we tried to get ahead of it in a couple of different places. One of the things that we saw coming and certainly hit home in March of 2020 with the shelter in place and the mass layoffs was our frontline workers. I mean, how do we keep those people safe? And our frontline workers are the merchandisers at that time. All your demo people that we had, and we had close to 30,000 of them, we had to lay off. But in turn, we kept in touch with them to try to bring them back as soon as things started to wrap up. And we've been fairly successful in doing that. July 2020, slowly we saw businesses start to open up. Costco started to open up and we were able to bring, as a great supporter Costco is of Advantage, we started bringing our people back to do light sanitation work. Anything safety, we were really concerned about how do we keep the CDC guidelines, social distancing in all our jobs, in our ads. We were speaking directly to that. And I think it's very important that each job that we have really gives a realistic job preview of what the candidates will be doing and what can they expect. And we'll get more into the demographics of people and how we've shifted to get some of that. But in Costco, particularly in our demo market, it's more high-risk people, older in age, which carries a lot of that high risk. And a lot of those people, understandably, did not want to come back and have not come back because of the Delta. So I think today it's a good idea that we look at before pandemic, what was it like? How can we take those learnings and couple that with during the pandemic? And today we're not out of it. our new normal, where's that going to sit? How do we take the unemployment, the reduction in stimulus, and be more directive in getting in front of the candidates that we really need to get in front of? And that's really the challenge in today's marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, let's dive into some of those strategies. I think that many in our community have been in the same boat that you've been in, even if they're not hiring tens and tens of thousands of people, they still may be hiring thousands. And so, of course, there are things that we can't control, like the number of available workers or the government policies, but we still have to recruit. So what are some of the specific solutions that you've been able to bring to tackle these challenges and get these jobs filled for your clients?
Great question. I think everybody should, we start with the marketing description. And starting with that, as I said before, it's speaking to a realistic job preview. But more importantly, it's what's in it? What's in it for the candidate? Why should they work for you? Where's the value proposition? Is it benefits? Is it incentives? Do they get perks? Is it a flexible work schedule? All of those fall into it. Shorter marketing description is better than a longer one. When it gets too many bullets and too long, people tend to lose interest and walk away. So where you take your job marketing description, you fold in, is it searchable? If you close your eyes and you think about a title that you want to call the job, does this really resonate? Can you think of the job that you're looking for, and how would your candidates search for your job? Once you put together your marketing description, it's always a good idea to go to Google Schema and drop that marketing description into Google Schema and see if you're complying 100%. Now, a lot of times you can't. And one of the areas is if it's highly competitive in your area, you might or might not want to post the pay rates. On the other side of it, location, if you can post a location and it's not a territory, then that will add in Google giving you points and ranking you higher on their Google job board. So searchability, how are people finding you? Do you make that easy with the search terms that are inside and really optimize your marketing description? And then supply and demand. I mean, know your market. I spent a lot of time with Appcast, I spent a lot of time with others, and we dig in, we understand population, competition, who's looking for the jobs, and who's really competing against us for that role. And then how much pressure can you put on that resource candidate pool? If you're out there and your time to fill is 30 to 40 days, you're putting a lot of pressure on. So as you first go into the market, you will receive candidates that you would say are A, quality, fit every position. Those might only be a couple of people. And then you'll get the Bs, and then you get the C. The longer that you stay into a market and put pressure on that resource pool, it doesn't replenish itself. So level setting with your hiring managers or the people that you're recruiting for is important, that it comes a time that we have to level set and say, okay, here is the talent that is actually applying.
Yeah.
Can you reduce and adjust?
Yeah. Yeah. You just brought up a point. I just want to, reiterate this to the Rally community that's tuning in, which is you've got a ton of pressure on you right now, but you really need to reach out to those vendors and agencies that are part of your broader team. Everybody needs to understand what your goals are, the challenges that you're up against, and they need to be, coming with partnership to you to help you get through this. And I know, Nancy, that's what you guys in Appcast do a lot. And I know a lot of people really appreciate your approach to working with your customers through like what probably at times feels insurmountable, but there is a path, right? There's a path forward. And so Tom, you mentioned change in who you're recruiting. So help us understand the candidate persona change that you've experienced. Who did you used to target before with your job ads? And who are you targeting now? And help us understand how you made that shift, how you figured that out, and then also how you're implementing that.
So pre-pandemic, we've always been very concerned about marketing descriptions and really telling the candidate what they're going to do so they stick around and do the interview. We saw at the end of 2019 that we saw a shift in behaviors, that candidates were now wage shopping because more companies were posting pay rates. So if you're not really competitive, then that might play for you or against you. And then there was a big push on the marketing side for the one-click applies. So you saw that with Indeed, you saw that with LinkedIn. A lot of people say, hey, you click here and you apply, but yet you don't really end up inside an applicant tracking system all the time. There's a little bit nuances, but I found that today we've seen more significant changes in candidate behavior, age and health risk come into play. We've seen a big shift in the hospitality industry, where people being on unemployment have had a time to reassess if they want to go back into an industry, and are they getting paid what they think they should be paid. So waiters, waitresses, bartenders, a lot of them are no longer willing to do the same work for the same amount of money. So where are they going? What are they doing? And we track that, so we're able to play with the words that they're searching on, to be able to play it, to direct them and get them to have their eyes on the jobs that we need to fill. Demographics, if I'm in a location, how do I expand that location to be in a reasonable job commute time? Google knows where you live. They run it on the zip codes. So when you search on a job, it'll give you your local jobs. And then if you're able to market in the nearby zip code, then you're expanding that geographic footprint. And that really helps with that visibility, because it's within a reasonable time that someone could commute. And then if they're remote, then you really open up your marketing abilities. But shorter job descriptions, if it's important and it's party work, absolutely speak to safety. Everybody that's running through their mind, even if they're not speaking it, they want to know that the company that they work for cares about their safety and is important to them. Certainly DE&I and the work that we've done around that with our inclusion groups, and being able to broadcast and move to that nature. Just as a diversity standpoint, to get more diversity, you get a better conversation, you get a better outcome, you get, at the end of the day, it really gives you different paths that you might not have worked with. So we really promote on that. And then any value propositions that you can actually include in your short marketing description, benefits, perks, incentives, have really helped to kind of spark that interest. Because really, at the end of the day, all you want to do is talk to this candidate and really see if they are a cultural fit, if they can do the job, if the time and their availability fits, and is the pay rate what they're willing to accept. So the more people that you get eyes on, the better off you're going to be.
It sounds like one of the key strategies for you has been relooking at your job ads and the way that you are marketing the job, ensuring that that you're listing salary, that you're listing the pay, because that is very important to people right now. And it might get, your job looked at versus another, especially as you mentioned in Google, who's rewarding job descriptions that include that data in them. And then in every case, you're trying to describe the safety environment, what you're doing specifically to ensure that people are safe. And this is very important for your jobs in particular, because they are these frontline jobs that are interacting with the public, in store. So probably one tip right now is for everyone, how can you take a look at your job descriptions, your job ads, look at who you're competing against, and make sure that yours are attractive. And before we go to the next slide, Nancy, I just want to ask you how, Tom mentioned working closely with you to understand who their talent competitors are. Could you just help us understand how do you do that exactly, so that someone can know, okay, we need to strengthen this aspect of our job ads in order to compete?
Absolutely. So when we think about across our client population, if you're really in the heat of high volume recruiting, we've seen our clients take out, for example, an assessment. So that might normally be part of the apply process, but in this really competitive season where you have to just hire in volume, sometimes that comes out temporarily, sometimes it comes out altogether. We've also seen that our clients typically work in the recruiting and talent acquisition space, and they don't all the time have the opportunity to define what that online apply process looks like. And so if we can share data with them, which of course we do through our programmatic tool, it really gives them the ability to build a business case and be able to go to the internal teams and say, here's data that's showing that we could get thus and such gains by making these changes to our online apply process.
Mm-hmm. And from a competition, is there like a report that you run for your clients, or, is it through like a consultative type discussion of, here's what your job ad is, here's other job ads that are similar to this in the markets where you're recruiting, and how here's some best practices to help you increase the application rate?
So we are always looking at the job market and looking to see what it looks like in terms of competition for any given role that's out there. Two things that we always do, Tom's already touched on, which is to encourage our clients to do that A/B title testing. So we have the ability to help you through Appcast programmatic technology, go ahead and test different titles. And it's really interesting, Lori, because you might find a title that works really well in the Pacific Northwest, and then that same title is not your top performer in the Southeast. So having the ability to have these variations is really important. And it's not a one and done. This is something that's an ongoing process with all of our clients. Tom also alluded to the geographic expansions that we do. And so Tom works with our account manager to make sure that for any of the locations that he's recruiting for, that we've got the right geographic area in there so that we're not missing anybody, but we're not going too far astray as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Tom, have you seen an increase in the number of applicants coming from, let's say, outside what previously was a geographic area for a particular job? Are people coming and willing to commute more?
I don't know if they're willing to commute more. I think it's more in really targeting them where they live, work, and play. I mean, if we talk about those three areas, I mean, that speaks volumes. And really to expand your media reach is through diversification. And Appcast has several tools to be able to do that. But I want to make sure that I'm getting it out to all the job boards. I have multiple areas that people can go to find our jobs. But really it's playing and knowing your data. So understanding and using the data to your advantage and understanding the changes in top of funnel performance, and taking that information and making the changes, such as what Nancy said previously, is removing the assessments, cutting down on on the friction points. The least amount of clicks to get you in front of that recruiter is really key, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But A/B testing titles, just because you think a title is great in one area, it really might not work in another. And I kind of joke around with people from time to time. It's the difference in areas of country where you're going. Some people call it pop, and other people call it soda. Some people call it sneakers, and other people call it tennies. I mean, it's as simple as that in some areas that might skew the job searcher in missing your job. So you want to be able to play with those and changing up the titles from time to time. You might flop from one to another just to give it a different look, and it sparks a different interest, which is really, really key. And then understanding your visibility on the internet through the cost per click, your page and position ranking, and get that visibility. You might have to pay a little bit more to get that top tier visibility to drive the amount of candidates that you need to convert to hires.
Yeah, one of the things that I know that Appcast does is they publish CPC and CPA, cost per click and cost per apply data for industries. And this is just a phenomenal resource because it helps you plan your budget. So you might be working with in leadership that's giving you a budget and saying this is how much it's going to cost in order to recruit this talent, but then you have this data of no, this is what the market rate is in order to do this kind of advertising to recruit the talent that we need. So it's really important to be, and a few pennies can make a huge difference to your budget, Tom, right? I mean, recruiting at the volume that you're recruiting. So really being on top of that data is super important.
And Lori, on our website, we have a content section, and there's some really nice data that you can garner there. But one that I'm thinking about is we actually did a study and we mapped out what are the optimal number of characters for a job title? What are the optimal number of words for a job descriptions? These are guidelines that you can take and action on very easily.
Yeah. And based on like actual data of your clients advertising those jobs. Yeah. Fantastic. And so you mentioned a little bit ago, Tom, the fact that it can be easy for people to apply and you want to remove friction, but there's a balance, right, between quantity and quality. Tell us how you're working through that right now.
So currently, I mean, we've worked diligently to remove the friction points, and it's something that we've worked close and have taken the feedback from Appcast on areas that they found that might be adding a click or slowing a candidate down and making it super easy for the candidate to get to our jobs, to find our jobs, to click, to apply, and get them in front of our recruiters to do the rest of the work. So what we found it, and we've taken the application process, which used to be very lengthy, and we've moved that to the onboarding process. And what we have found is that people are willing to look at the job, apply to the job. I'll give you my contact information. I'll give you my resume, but let's have a conversation. And if I'm qualified and if you want me to work for you, then I have no problem filling out an application, giving you other information that might be somewhat sensitive. On the other side of it, pushing that to the onboarding side, we've taken away that friction point and have increased our candidate flow in some areas by 30%, which really is quite significant in moving through that. And how do you get the candidates a little bit more vested in the process? We've moved a little bit more in some areas towards a direct apply. So I want them to come into our system and take a little bit of time. Or with the quick apply, we've added a couple of pre-qualifying questions just to slow them down just a touch, to make them think about what they're clicking instead of just title searching and clicking on jobs. So I want them to slow down, are you of legal age? If 18 is important to your company, can you do the job with or without a reasonable accommodation? And are you legally authorized to work in the United States? Those are just some of the knockout questions that are very important to Advantage. And that slows them down and gets us a better candidate. And then you look and you say, okay, for being invested, how do I make them more of the process? I mean, once they get to a certain point, give them the option to make their own schedule on a recruiter's calendar. They know that they're in control of it and that they are actually going to get interviewed and get a call instead of sitting into a bin and wondering, will the recruiter ever call me back? I mean, that's a big thing. And then you look at all the data and you go, why do people still ghost? And really in the high volume space, what we have found is the primary cause is we're just not getting back to the people that applied fast enough. If another company calls them, they typically go with that company. If the pay rates are competitive and the schedule works, they're gone. They've accepted another offer, or if the process is easier than the one I'm trying to put them through, they tend to take the path of least resistance. So what we have done actively to reduce that ghosting is engage with them. They've imposed a SLA, service level agreement on the recruiters, that anybody that comes in, they should be contacting those people within 20 minutes of the apply. That has increased the contact rate and the down funnel effects to that from a positive standpoint. Apply process, shorter and easier. Add a couple short qualifying questions, I would say. Reduce title surfing and add self-scheduling, which makes them part of the process and makes them own it, and they're a little bit more vested.
Wow. We could have a whole discussion with you about putting a 20-minute SLA on your recruiting team. I have a feeling you might get some questions about that in the Q&A portion. Super interesting. And so I know that, programmatic technology has been an important part of your strategy, and we have folks who are joining in who also use programmatic, from one vendor or another. Share some of your pro tips for what they should be doing in order to really optimize their use of programmatic.
So I would say the programmatic team, the one that you work with, leverage your team, and it's really important that you understand your data, and we'll come back to data. Data is so important in our world. I have a lot of people generate a lot of different reports, and I try to gravitate and only work with the ones that tell me what to do better tomorrow than I'm doing today. What adjustments do I need to make, and is it really clear what's happening out there? So what I like to say is to my team, we inspect what we expect on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And we're constantly working with our programmatic team to set and adjust budget goals, look at our application. Are they converting down funnel? Are they not converting? Where are they getting stuck? What data is that telling us? And when you do the A/B title, are more people moving to hire from an action that you took opposed to how you had it before? Because all your data will also speak to your quality goals, because those little tweaks and those little adjustments will maybe garner you a different candidate. What I like to say is your job description will attract a certain individual, and you might have something in there that you're unaware of that might be attracting a certain individual that doesn't convert as well. So you need to find out what those words are and be able to adjust those to improve the quality. So your data will tell you when and where to question, and if it's time to adjust your rules. And really, again, I go back to my programmatic team. The relationship and the data that I provide them is transparent into my system as much as I possibly can be. And then they're able to take their expertise, fold it into my data, and really be a strong partner to not only reduce costs, but increase your applies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, the partnership is really key. And so this was one of the stats that you shared with us. Tom, tell us what we're looking at here.
So in 2019, we were able to get on average down to a 10-to-1 conversion rate. That's 10 applies to 1 hire, and that was on average. With the pandemic and through into 2021, with adjusting for ghosting and everything else, we now sit on an average of about an 18-to-1. And what we're trying to do is understand the data and know why is it an 18-to-1? Is it from when they apply to the amount of people that the recruiter is actually contacting them? If that every 2 people you're talking to 1, that might be the case. When it goes up to a 4-to-1 on contact rate, then I have to question, are we getting to them fast enough? What's happening? And then I run time studies on that, because it's really key to get to these people as fast as possible. And then if you have a hiring manager that has the final approval and you have another interview set down the stream, once you qualify them and move them forward, is that a 10-to-1? So if I'm a 2-to-1 from a contact and then a 10-to-1 to hiring, that's a 20-to-1 conversion rate. So where's the disconnect?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? And then I look at all the disposition codes, and what does that tell us? Are they falling off because we're not offering enough money? It might be a pay issue. It might be a scheduling issue. So we look at all those disposition codes to see if we can adjust and attract a better quality candidate to convert at a better rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. This is a really good metric for everyone to have, in front of them, to know pre-pandemic and today, what is this ratio for the number of applicants to hires? And then, as Tom said, he's given you some really good tidbits on where to look to try to optimize your funnel. So, so wrapping up here, I'd love to hear sort of your top, few pro tips for the community in terms of dealing with high volume hiring during the labor shortage. So Tom, why don't you go first?
I would say number one is understanding your data. And more importantly, understanding what it's telling you to do tomorrow better than you're doing today would be my top. And the more data that you have is better. In the high volume space, candidates are looking, needing a job today, money tomorrow. First company to engage with the candidate absolutely wins. So speed to engagement is key, and leverage your technology. Embrace it, test it, trust it, empower it, so you're more efficient and more effective, and you're able to spend the time analyzing and making the adjustments instead of mired in what do I do next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. And Nancy, how about your pro tips?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, reducing friction in the apply process is a big one. If you can take your apply process down by minutes, that's going to have a big impact in terms of your conversion rate. We also like to see clients go for retargeting. So you have applicants who have come in but haven't taken all the actions you would like them to. Let's go back to them and market your brand and your offering to make sure that we can get them farther down the funnel. And then to echo what Tom said, we like to see people use technology to make data-driven decisions. Things that can happen is it will help you understand where your biggest ROI is and make sure that subsequent spend is going to that. So we're always adding that big high value.
Thank you. Amazing. I really appreciate all the expertise that both of you shared. And I know we've already got some questions queued up for you. Just to plug here, our next webinar is going to be on September 16th, and we're going to look at the new way to measure recruitment marketing. So I encourage all of you to register for that, and we will be sure to send you a link so that you have an opportunity to register for the next webinar. And if you haven't already, please take our job and salary survey. It's the most comprehensive survey done of jobs and responsibilities for anyone who practices recruitment marketing or employer branding, whether you do it full-time or even part-time, even if it's a small part of your job, we want to hear from you. And so you can go to rallyrecruitmentmarketing.com and you'll find a link to the survey. So let's take a few questions. All right, we've got a bunch here. I'm just going to dive into the Q&A tab here on Zoom. And if even if we don't get a chance to answer your question, go ahead and put them in, because we can always reach back out to Tom and Nancy and post the Q&A on the Rally blog. All right, so someone asked, are no-shows on self-schedule interviews an issue? So Tom, you mentioned, fastest to engage, giving candidates the power to control their schedule and schedule that time to talk to an interview. I assume that's helped with no-shows. Have you still seen an issue there?
We have, and what we've done to be able to do that, we work with a platform, Calendly, and in Calendly, we're able to, as you sign up for your interview, send you an email to confirm, and then we send you 2 text messages as the event gets closer. And we always give you an option, because life gets in the way, to reschedule. That's might be more convenient, and we've been able to cut down on those no-shows.
Okay, so it's gone in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Great. And so I knew you were going to get a question about this SLA. So do you have, or can you share what percentage of the time the recruiting team is now hitting, reaching that SLA of 20 minutes to respond?
In regards to gearing back up and staffing back up our recruiters, because as of shelter in place, we also scaled down. Now we're scaling back up. We run weekly exception reports to be able to look at SLAs and anybody that's outside of an SLA. We've had to increase that just a little bit, but we're working to get it down. So the real point is, how do we get them into place and give them a workload that they can get back to their candidates as quickly as possible?
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So someone asked a question. Does your team make the hiring decision, or are you using a hiring manager for the final hiring decision? Because that obviously is another step in the process. So how has this changed with the labor shortage?
Great question. And I would have to say D, all of the above. Some of our internal clients that handle a certain banner, let's call it a Walmart, for example, the hiring managers make the final decision. On some of the Costco, the recruiters are certified and they're able to make hiring decisions. But it's always important for the demo workers to be able to get a set of eyes on them any way you can, through a Skype call or somewhere else. But our certified people, we don't take that lightly. They have to prove themselves in the quality of the candidates that they move forward to the hiring manager. And then after a certain number that they qualify to be certified, to make the hiring decision. So we stage into that. Some we're able to do, and some of the clients we're not able to do. And typically with the merchandising, a lot of those will always go to a hiring manager to make the final decision.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense. And Nancy, this one is for you. So if someone is trying to create a baseline or a benchmark of where they are today so that they, as they invest in new technology or they implement programmatic, for example, they can see the improvement that they made. What do you recommend? How do you work with customers to kind of get that today's snapshot and then help them to see what the improvement is?
So I think there's three things I would suggest. Number one is to go to the Appcast website and go to the content tab. We do publish a lot of benchmark reports, and I think that those are very important details that you can take and start to kind of marry with the data that you have on hand. The second thing I would suggest is to sign up for the Appcast blog. So the blog has a lot of tips in there that range from people who work for the company, sharing data that they're learning from their research or experiences, as well as some guest writers that come from outside of Appcast. And then the third piece, we would love to take you through kind of a drive of what Appcast does with our programmatic technology, because it really does provide a game changer in terms of how you can elevate your speed to get to those hires.
I think it would be great, Nancy, after the webinar, maybe early next week, that you guys could follow up and maybe share your benchmark report with everyone. Like that would be a great follow-up. So thank you guys so much. We do have more questions, but we've run out of time, but go ahead. Anyone who's listening in, please submit your questions. And what we can do is we can work with Tom and with Nancy to create a blog post that will answer all of the Q&A. So you can have that as a resource. So thank you, Tom, and thank you, Nancy. This was fantastic. I learned a lot. I hope everyone in the community learned a lot as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us.
Thanks, Lori.
You're more than welcome. Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah, and please connect with them on LinkedIn, guys. There's the resource. There's still a resource for you even after the webinar is over. So I would encourage you to connect with both Nancy and Tom on LinkedIn. All right, thank you, guys. Have a great day.